Beware, dear listener, for this winding tale may stir your spirit in unexpected ways. And what is this tale about? Well, allow me to unveil it straight away. This is what happens when you stop chasing an avoidant. Yes, we shall journey into the curious landscape of avoidant attachment, exploring just how astonishing it can be when you finally cease your pursuit of one who insists on retreating into their own distant universe. Let me begin by offering a recollection from my younger days, a quaint memory of standing in a quiet library, that ancient aroma of books all around, while an old friend of mine wriggled in unease at the mere hint of companionship. This friend would shift the conversation so deftly, you might think he was performing a splendid bit of sleight of hand. One moment, he would beam as though the entire world had charmed him, and in the next, he'd be across the room, feigning fascination with a dusty encyclopedia, not wishing to be near anyone too long. We were confused, of course, but in time I discovered that such individuals fall under what modern psychology calls an avoidant attachment style. Now, you may ask, what precisely does that mean? An avoidant style is, if you will, the perpetual dance of wanting connection, but desperately fearing the surrender of one's independence. These people yearn to share in the riches of companionship even as they guard their personal domain with the ferocity of a knight protecting a secret fortress. They fear being overwhelmed by closeness, losing themselves in the embrace of another. So they sidestep, they dodge, they withdraw, and in their heart of hearts, they tell themselves it is safer to stand alone. But what, dear audience, happens when you, in your earnest desire to reach them, decide to stop chasing? Let us pass the first of our curiosities. What usually happens when you stop chasing an avoidant? You see, in my decades of observing both people in my personal circles and countless characters on stage and screen, I've found that the avoidant individual often comes to rely on your pursuit as a kind of shield. The more you chase, the more they feel justified in their retreat, justified in believing that closeness is dangerous, and so they hold you at arm's length. Yet, when you gently lay down your arms, halting the chase, an avoidant finds themselves confronted by a sudden hush. Their environment shifts. The noise of your pursuit, which used to reinforce their fearful stance, is gone. In that space, sometimes they experience a flicker of longing. They think, where has that person gone? Am I truly as comfortable alone as I claimed? And quite often, that flicker draws them tentatively closer. This notion brings us to the next great question. Do people with avoidant attachment styles secretly want you to chase them? In a sense, they do desire your attention, yet it is attention on their own terms. Closeness that doesn't breach their protective moat. It's an emotional paradox. Come here, but not too close. Love me, but do not consume me. Imagine, if you will, an elegant cat perched atop a fence, mewling for a gentle stroke, only to spring away the instant you draw near. In the avoidant's mind, they do crave the warmth of a loving hand, but the moment it threatens to limit their freedom, they vanish into the night. There's a certain inevitability, a cyclical nature to the relationship between an anxious person, one who fears abandonment, and an avoidant person, one who fears entrapment. Perhaps, like me, you have seen it play out among your acquaintances or loved ones. An anxious partner grows jittery whenever the avoidant disappears for days on end, scribbling elaborate text messages or leaving voicemails that sound increasingly desperate for a response. Meanwhile, the avoidant is doing precisely what they do best, hiding behind silence, carving out solitude from the swirling anxieties of the world. And each time, that anxious soul tries to fix it. If I could just talk to them, reason with them, show them how much I care, they would surely understand. But ironically, that well-intentioned problem-solving triggers the avoidance instincts anew. sending them retreating like a skittish animal into the undergrowth. So, they continue their dance, chase and retreat, round and round, until one grows too exhausted to continue. If you find yourself in such a situation, you may wonder, why should I even stop chasing an avoidant if I adore them so much? The reason, dear friend, is that if you endlessly pursue, the avoidant rarely feels safe enough to come forward on their own. By relenting, by creating that space the avoidant so craves, you give them the freedom to approach you without the fear that they will be swallowed up in the swirl of emotional closeness. You offer them that rare chance to step toward you rather than away from you, and that tiny shift, allowing the avoidant to initiate contact, can be precisely what breathes life back into the relationship. But let us not be too hasty in expecting miracles. That leads us into our final area of inquiry. Why do people with avoidant attachment styles give you mixed signals? Picture a solitary lighthouse beaming into the night. It stands for guidance, yet it looms in lonely isolation. That is the avoidant's heart, intensely yearning for human connection while shining a cautious lamp that says, "Approach at your own risk. My beam may go dark at any moment." Mixed signals spring from the avoidant's deep-seated need to preserve autonomy. When too much closeness threatens that autonomy, alarms ring in their mind, and they push loved ones away. Then, in a quieter moment, the pang of loneliness or nostalgia stirs them to reach out again. They do love, they do yearn, but their reflex is to safeguard themselves by vacillating. Come close. Not that close. Come close again. Imagine them perched on a seesaw, tilting with every shift in their internal world. In my younger years, I recall knowing a man named Adrian, a tall, reserved fellow who took pride in his independence to a degree that surprised everyone who knew him. Adrian had a partner who was wonderfully caring, always eager to maintain daily contact, plan cozy weekends, and share every detail of life together. He liked her, even loved her, but each time she tried to integrate him into her world, he would recoil, grumbling that he needed his personal space. She would fret. Was he losing interest? Her anxiousness rose, and in reaction, she redoubled her calls and messages. The more she did so, the more Adrian dug in his heels. He provided her only faint glimmers of warmth, then vanished. At last, in exasperation, she decided to simply back off. Lo and behold, a curious thing transpired. With that breathing room, Adrian discovered the pull of his own yearning. His messages became more frequent, more affectionate, quite at odds with his old pattern. I am often asked, is that guaranteed to happen if I stop chasing an avoidant? Guarantees in matters of the heart are as thin as smoke on the horizon. We cannot foresee every swirl in a person's mind. Yet many times, offering space to an avoidant is the sole path by which they find their way back. Only in the hush of your unchasing presence might they realize that they long for the closeness they have long kept at bay. It is a delicate business, requiring patience, fortitude, and a certain acceptance that you cannot single-handedly dispel all of their fears. I have observed this dynamic not just in courtships, but in friendships, familial relationships, even the complexities of an old man's bond to his craft. It is reminiscent of an actor who adores the stage yet fears the intrusion of too many watchers. In the quiet dressing room, he sits in solitude, shunning conversation. But when he senses the hush of that emptiness, when the chatter outside fades, he emerges to tread the boards under the spotlight once more. Humanity, even for the avoidant, is still a communal affair. We are drawn to one another as moths to a lamp's glow, wary though we may be of the heat. So what can you do if you find yourself yearning for a deeper bond with an avoidant partner who issues sporadic signals like a trembling telegraph? The wisest approach is simply to step back, recalibrate, and allow them room to draw near. Respect those moments when they sink into solitude. Resist the impulse to solve every wobble with a flurry of calls and heartfelt speeches. Instead, demonstrate that you are present without smothering. Show that you respect their boundaries, and in that space, they may awaken to the notion that independence and love need not be sworn enemies. Remember, this is what happens when you stop chasing an avoidant. You create an environment where the avoidant is no longer frightened by the chase. You allow them to see the world without the cloud of anxiety that your constant pursuit once triggered. You permit them the autonomy they feel they require, and through this sense of safety, you open a door for them to come forward willingly. Whether you are that bright-eyed, anxious soul, poised on the edge of heartbreak, or someone simply curious about the intricacies of human relationships, know that the key to an avoidant's heart lies in offering them an unpressured invitation. And in doing so, you may discover that you can savor the sweet spot between closeness and freedom. Thus, dear friend, we conclude our exploration. We have seen how stepping away from the pursuit can shift the emotional terrain of an avoidant. We have revealed the subtle ways in which they might secretly wish to be chased, though only from a careful distance. Finally, we have deciphered why their signals flash hot and cold, as though powered by a fickle breeze across a flickering flame. Through it all, remember, the journey to understanding an avoidant is like trekking through a misty valley. One must tread gently, guided by empathy rather than force, by openness rather than demand. In that calm, unpressured space, you just might catch a glimpse of the closeness they have yearned for all along.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.